What's cracking with you people? Anansi here, and welcome back to Dead or Alive Ultimate. In the last one, we did a breakdown and bio of Lei Fong in her first run in the first Dead or Alive tournament. In this one, we're going to be doing Yin Fu. So, without further ado, Yin Fu may appear to be just a feeble shop owner, but his master Jinyi Liu Quan is no one to patronize. No one knows the reason why Ginfu recently came out of retirement to enter the Dead or Alive tournament, nor would anyone guess about the dream that haunts Ginfu nightly. His grandfather Mei Lin lying in her bed in agony. The harsh reality forces him to fight again in order to save his granddaughter's life. So yeah, unlike a lot of other characters in Dead or Alive, Ginfu enters the first tournament, and I believe canonically he only enters the first two tournaments, just to help his granddaughter out. I think they would retcon this to fall in line with another character, and then we'll get to them in the next game. But yeah, Ginfu is only doing this to help his granddaughter out. They never mention what was going on with Baylin's parents. I think it's just Ginfu and his granddaughter. But before we get into that, let's get a little bit more into Ginfu as a game mechanic, as his mechanics are good into Ginfu gameplay wise. Ginfu is I would argue is probably the most technical fighter in the game. I think in the series, to be 100% with you. I feel like if you pick up Ginfu, you know what you're doing, because a lot of his strikes are very slow, very methodical, and very precise. To the point where if you pay attention to the screen, it feels like a lot of the attacks I do miss by like a hair, or attacks that should connect just outright don't. Now, granted, there are a lot of instances where I'm just jumping the gun in this this footage, and I should just be a little bit more patient. It gets to a point where I swear there are some fights where I just literally spam the same attack like 3 times in a row, but yeah, I feel like if you're going to pick up Ginfu, if you're going to use him as a main, you have to understand the mechanics of the game inside out, and I think you have to go into training mode and actively learn Ginfu as a character. Because otherwise you're going to be in for a very rough time. Luckily the AI this time around went a little bit easier on me as opposed to the Lei Fang video, because oh dear lord, it was the AI just going to town on me in that one. And Ginfu is by far probably one of the worst characters I play. I'm just not good at him at all. Bayman, I would say I'd never play him, and that's why I would class him as the worst character for me. Ginfu is just difficult because he is just that hard to learn. Yeah, going back into Ginfu's place inside the story and inside the narrative, Ginfu is one of the supporting characters of Dead or Alive. Much like Lei Fong, Zack, Jean Li, I say Jean is his name, he's not French, he's Chinese, Jan Li, Tina, and I think that's it for the original cast right now. He's mostly there to be something completely different to what's going on in the mainline title. For instance, you know, we have Ryu who's tracking down his best friend's little sister Kasumi. Kasumi who's out on a quest of vengeance against the final boss of the game. And Bayman who's out to assassinate the head of Doatek. Ginfu occupies a space like to face with Lei Fang, Tina, and Jan Li, where they're mostly in the tournament for their own personal reasons that are completely separate and unrelated to the main story. And with regards to Mei Lin, I don't know if they've outright confirmed this, but it's heavily hinted in later games that Mei Lin contracted a rare either genetic disease or something else that is potentially terminal if the disease allows to progress. I think she has an early stage of it. Think of it like I can't believe I'm. Well, actually, no, wait. I'll bring it up in this contest. Think of it like Frost, like Mr. Freeze in Batman, where they retconned his character to be looking for a cure for his wife. A retcon that proved to be so popular and informed the character so much that they went on to use it in the widely panned Joel Schumacher film Batman Forever, I believe, where they had Arnold Schwarzenegger play Mr. Freeze. And they still kept that plot point in there. It proved to be so popular in the animated series that they just held on to it. And you know, the big plot point in that was that Alfred had contracted the same disease that was afflicting Mr. Freeze's wife, but he contracted an early enough version of the disease, or at least he contracted it in the early enough phase that Mr. Freeze had a cure on hand for that particular part of the disease. He didn't have the cure for the later stage of the disease. He had a cure for the early stages. Same thing with Mei Lin. They would later inform her. They would later either retcon it, or this might be fan speculation, but I think it's hinted that she might have the same disease that Helena, a character that would be introduced in Dead or Alive 2, that she would have contracted the same disease that Helena's mother contracted that ultimately killed her. Well, not ultimately killed, but pretty much made her incredibly sickly. I believe it was Helena. I want to say it was Helena's mother. It could be Tina's mother. I remember that Tina's mother gets randomly brought up in a side piece of content. But regardless, what's it again? Yeah, right. Genfu is really only interested in entering in the first tournament to get the prize money. And as it was mentioned inside his bio, he's a master of a fighting style that I can never remember off the top of my head because it is a hard one to pronounce. I think it's Jinli Liu Quan. I hope I got it right that time. If I did, sound off in the comments. If I didn't, feel free to mock me. He's such a master at it that he is widely known as Genfu of the Iron Fist. He is that skilled with it. As a matter of fact, I think of the entire character roster, Genfu might be the most skilled competitor to ever enter the Dead or Alive tournament. Zack is self-taught, Kasumi's young, Ryu Hayabusa, so he's going to automatically gain bonus bounty points just for sheer fact of his time in the NES games. Hayate is considered a master in that regard, and you have some other characters who are proficient in certain areas, and when we get to Jan Lee, I'm going to bring up a very interesting note about him that is frankly ridiculous. But yeah, no, he is what's I'm looking for? Yeah, he's I think the only character in the roster who is canonically a master at his fighting style. I also meant to bring this up. I cannot believe I completely forgot to mention this, but every character, well, for the most part, every character has a side. Has like in their bio, they have their favorite treats and whatnot and hobbies, and they have that in the in-game screen. They don't end up bringing this into, I want to say, Dead or Alive 2, and I think that might be where they got the info inside the Dead or Alive 1 Ultimate Manual from. But Genfu is the owner of a used bookstore. Yeah, that's what he does in his retirement. He sells used books. And Ryu Hayabusa, the guy whose games are known to break you in half just because it can, even going back to the mid to late 90s. Do you know what his job is? When he's not cutting people down with his dragon sword and doing backflips and back alleys and killing demons, he owns an antique shop. It's called a curio shop. I think that's the actual Japanese name for it. But this guy who's in like his mid-20s owns an antique shop, while Genfu, who's an elderly gentleman, owns a used bookstore shop. I just want to let that sink in. I like those little small details. Because Bayman's obviously a mercenary. I think Lei Fang is her occupation is literally college student. That's her occupation. And having been to college, yeah, that's a full-time job. And Kasumi is a what's we looking for? Kasumi is a, well, she doesn't really have a job. She's supposed to be the next leader of her clan, but that's a story in and of itself. But yeah, no, Genfu's the only master only skill, who's the only person who's considered a master of his fighting style, like in a revered sense. in the game, to the point where he has a legendary status attached to his name and a public eye, not just the Dragon Ninja like Ryu has. And he enters the second tournament, and we get to the next game. I'll bring this up a little bit more detail. But he's enters the second game to pay the hospital bills for Melee. And if you know anything about health insurance and going to the hospital and the doctor, yeah, those bills can pile up pretty fast. Anyway, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but Ginfu only really is in the tournament for personal reasons. And after the second game, I don't think he ever participates in the Dead or Alive tournament after the second game. From then onward, I think his fighting style and the person that would go on to represent the tournament with his fighting style is his apprentice, who he finds, I think, randomly in 3. I think 3 is when he passes the torch, and then 4 is when his apprentice takes over. And we'll get to him when we get to him. But I have an interesting thing to say. Well, I have an opinion about the person who's going to take over Ginfu's fighting style, but that's neither here nor there. At least regards to Dead or Alive Ultimate. But I just find it interesting that with regards to arcade endings, and especially with the fact that Dead or Alive has more or less moved away from arcade ladder endings with games like Dead or Alive 5 and 6. It's just interesting to note his place is it's very likely that he probably will not be showing up in a ladder ending like that again for a while. And I've been thinking about this recently, and I think Ginfu's the perfect time to bring it up, because Lei Feng still plays a role in the main story of Dead or Alive. It is like a side story in the later games. Ginfu, I do not believe, has a main story in Dead or Alive 5. I think he shows up near the end of another character's chapter, because linear storylines, they can't really let you play as every single character on the roster. Especially since in recent years, games like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Tekken, I think they have like 30 plus characters now. So to have a main storyline, they have to kind of narrow it down to like, I think in terms of like playable characters, I think it's like 12, and then it caps out around 20-something-ish characters who are represented in the storyline, but you don't get to play as. And it makes me wonder if they're ever going to bring back ladder endings, arcade ladder endings, I should say. For instance, like we're playing the arcade mode right now. This is supposed to have to a story mode in Dead or Alive Ultimate, because once again, this came out as an arcade cabinet game, not as a console release when it first released. Arcade ladders would not be added to like Dead or Alive 2, as opposed to like, and you know what I mean by arcade ladders. You're like, in Dead or Alive's case, is like full CGI cutscenes, which I freaking adore, as opposed to I think NetherRealm, well, I guess Midway at the time, with Mortal Kombat, it was just like CG slides, like just like little like still images that were lightly animated to give off the impression of what was going on inside their story. Whereas Dead or Alive goes like full on like skits, like some ranging from serious, so others like action epics, and others are just like straight up jokes. It is amazing. I do kind of miss seeing that kind of creativity with arcade endings. And I hope we see them again. Keep the main story mode, as it were. Have your main kind of like overarching narrative for your fighting. Because I think in this day and age, having a game that doesn't have a narrative is a death sentence. Contrary to what developers like EA, I know this is going on a bit of a tangent here, but bear with me here. But contrary to what people like Electronic Arts would think, and they have backpedaled on this in recent years. I remember there was a time when they said, "Yeah, we just don't want to do single player campaigns. People play the multiplayer more often." And true enough, a lot of people do play multiplayers, but that's only with regards to first-person shooters. Racing titles and fighting games and platformers, I feel like you have to have a narrative, even with first-person shooters. You can't skimp out on a narrative, just get a big name to play a part and then have that sell it. I think you need to have your single players, because going back to Shigeru Miyamoto, his philosophy when he makes his games is you never know what game is going to be a person's first. Like, for instance, I grew up with Dead or Alive 2, but someone else might have started off with Dead or Alive Ultimate, or heck, they might have jumped in the series with Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. You never know. You can't just assume that people are fans of your series. You can't just assume that they know what's going on just to jump into it. Because, I mean, Call of Duty plays differently from a Battlefield game. Battlefield plays differently from a Halo game. Even if they're all borrowing similar gameplay aesthetics, similar gameplay mechanics, they still do their own things to a degree. Even like games like Dead or Alive and Tekken and Mortal Kombat, these 3D fighters, they have button combos and stuff, but they have different emphasis on what kind of combos you want to use. So I think you need to have your story mode to kind of get people familiarized with at least a core number of the playable cast. But you're realistically just not going to be able to fit 30, 40 plus characters. In Mortal Kombat's case, at the height of its popularity, it had like 62 characters on its roster. You know, you can't just realistically expect people to be able to play all of these characters in a story mode. So having an arcade style like mini story that focuses around an individual character, maybe have like short cutscenes interspersed throughout the arcade to kind of get an idea of what this character's personal story is. Even characters from the main plot should have this inside the arcade mode, where you get smaller stories to be able to get a better idea of what the character is, get a better idea of how to play the characters. When you go into online play, you have at least some time in the arcade mode having practiced these characters to be able to say, okay, I played enough of this one character online. I'm gonna go ahead and play character Y. You know, like I haven't played Mortal Kombat in years, but when I used to play Mortal Kombat, I think the last time I played Mortal Kombat was Mortal Kombat 3, because when I tried to play Mortal Kombat 9, that was right when the Sony hacks happened and my brother's PlayStation 3 bricked. Never picked that game up again. Now it was a shame, because I was really looking forward to playing that game. But yeah, when I played Mortal Kombat, I used to play, I believe it was Liu Kang, Raiden, Kitana, and Mileena. Those were my 4 characters that I played in Mortal Kombat. But because of the arcade ladders, I was able to get used, because I wanted to see like what was going on with the other characters, because the ending cutscene and the ending narrative was like something to strive for at the end of that. I got to get experience with characters like Goro and Shiva and I don't think those characters were in 3. But characters like Sub-Zero and I believe it was and Jade and stuff like that. I got used to I got able to play these characters and get what they were about. Same thing with games like Dead or Alive and Tekken. I got Tekken Tag Tournament 2 as a free download from XBLA, and while I have not played the story mode in that, I did play the arcade, and I did that, and you can see it. I have it on the channel like from years and years ago, where I played Tag Tournament 2. I just picked a bunch of random characters, and I got to get a good idea of what they were about. And I played Tag Tournament 2 the first Tag Tournament a long time ago at a friend's birthday party, and we had like there was like a mode where you have to pick like up to 8 characters, and I was able to get a good idea of what the characters were about. And granted, it wasn't story mode. It was just me messing around, just playing around with some friends of mine. But having a mini story in the arcade mode, yes, it would be a lot of work. Yes, it would be time consuming, and yes, you have to hire more voice talent and whatnot. And well, I won't say hire more voice talent, but have the existing voice talent do more lines. You have to pay for that, and you got to risk having the game either make a profit or not. I still think having these ladder endings for characters like Genfu and Lei Fang, where we get to see them play a bigger role in their own self-contained story, as opposed to just kind of being sidelined for the sake of the main plot and having only a few select characters, either whether or not they be integral to the main plot of the narrative or just be fan service characters like Tina and Zack are relegated to in later games. It would be nice to kind of see these extra endings go forward, because it would, in my opinion, lessen the gimmick I've been seeing in recent years, where they make the games needlessly serious, needlessly dark, and for whatever reason, there's been a there's been a trend, and I think the trend is starting to kind of lessen a bit. I'm glad that Dead or Alive hasn't gone this way just yet. Still time for it to happen, but it's games like Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat, and especially Tekken, where they'll just randomly kill off characters or retire them and then give their fighting style to a completely different character, and then they just won't utilize them. I won't speak too much to Tekken's ability with that, because I think that's a mainstay for the Tekken universe to just do that to his characters, but Soul Calibur 5, I was looking forward to Soul Calibur 5, and when I picked that game up and found out that every single one of my mains, barring Mitsurugi, had been completely removed, I'm not gonna lie, it immediately turned me off to the game. Because the characters that were put there in its place, Patroclus and Pyrrha, I did not care for. And then there was a Natsu and I think Ziba, who replaced Killick and Taki, and I think Shang was replaced. I forget what her name was. I did not care for them. I really didn't. And man, that might just me being like an old curmudgeon. By the way, I'm only 26, so well at the time of this recording, I'm literally not that old, all things considered. But I feel like it's ultimately unnecessary if they're going to if they're trying to tell a serious story. I think what you should do is, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every 5 seconds, focus on the story you got right now, finish it out, and then decide from there if you want where to go next for the characters. You can still have characters. You can still have the Superman, Batman, legacy characters, and just have them be part of the story going forward, or have little homage characters or other characters. But I feel like reinventing the wheel is ultimately unnecessary. Granted, that's probably going to happen regardless of what I say, so that's just my personal opinion, and it might have to do with the fact that I have not seen it done well, period. Even Mortal Kombat's new characters, I think with the exception of maybe Jackie Briggs, I don't particularly care for any of the new characters. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, no, I hope we see more ladder endings. I hope we see more mini stories coming forth from these fighting games in the coming years. Anyway, I've been Anansi, you've been awesome, and I'll catch you later.